All right, again, thank you to everybody for keeping your masks on. We have an elderly professor here, so. All right, I did get the exams back. Okay. Let's see who's here. TJ, is TJ? Okay. You just sort of pass these up. All right. Benjamin Rafin. Benjamin, can you send that back up to Benjamin? Daly. There you go. Andrew Verberg. There. John Welker. John. Okay. Josh Hypes. There you go. Claire Gautier. Oh, good. Go ahead. There you go. Paul Brophy. Let me send that back up that direction there. Dana Wedinger. Go that direction. Justin Johnson. Justin. Okay. Daniel Harmon. And Dana, can I talk to you? You're head of the Republican, College Republicans. If you could just stop for a minute in between. Audrey Guess. There you go. Andrew Brenacata. Is that, how's your last name? Okay. Jack Ketchum. Christopher Butters. Let's send that back up that way. Emma Burback. Libby. Can you snap it? There you go. Brennan Bush. Claire Hensel. Brendan, can you send it up that direction? Jack Robinson. Brendan, send it up that way. Sabrina. There she is. Gabriel Powell. Oops. Almost got it. There you go. Thank you. Maggie. Oh, there you go. Patton Harmon. Send that one all the way up. Leo Bikirk. Okay, yeah. Send Leo's up that way. Meredith. Ian Calvert. Yeah, shoot, Ian's back up there. Caroline Briel. There you go. Maggie.
Oh, I have the wrong Maggie.
Wrong Maggie? Okay. So, okay. There we go. Forgot there was two Maggies. Okay, it's Maggie Weckenhurt. Okay. Let's see, Ben Hansen. Send Ben's back up there. Peter Harrigan. And Peter's up that way. Ceci Moran. Caleb. Laura Ryan. Brendan, could you? He's up that way. Joel. And Mark. Mark Sherman. Okay. So do you have one? Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. All right, the median grade was a 41. That is about right, and not about right. That is about what it normally is, somewhere 39, 40, 41 is usually the median. Remember, this is only 25% of your grade. The other midterms were 25%, and then the finals were 40, and then the take-home essays were 10. So you have an indication of where you are. The mean was 39.8. So about the median and mean were about the same, which tells you that it's sort of a normal ECON 206. You know, you have a normal distribution. The median and the mean are the same. But so anyway, people did relatively well on this. So let's go ahead and go over the exam. Suppose the current price for beer at Hillsdale Brewing, the demand for non-seniors is inelastic and the demand for seniors is elastic. So right, this is what? This is a price discrimination problem. So at the current price, if you raise the price on inelastic demand, remember the percentage change in quantity is going to be less than the percentage change in price, so total revenue will go up. If you lower it, on elastic demand, the percentage change in quantity is going to be bigger than the percentage change in price, and so total revenue will go up. So A is correct. Can increase the revenue by increasing the price for non-seniors and decreasing the price for seniors. And then the B and C are both incorrect. If you lowering the price for seniors is go in the wrong direction, and buying the same amount of beer when you raise the price, you'd have to have perfectly inelastic demand, and that's not what the question says. So A is the correct answer there. Number two, suppose the following table is the total cost for making pizzas at Johnny T's. So we look at when we want to decide how many pizzas Johnny T's is going to sell, the marginal benefit to them is the price that they're getting, which in this case is how many, if the market price is $5, would you sell the first one? Well, the total cost of the first one's 2. So if you assume the marginal cost is then 2, because we're assuming that the total cost of 0 is 0. So what you'd want to do is give yourself what the marginal cost curve is. The marginal cost curve of the first one's 2. The marginal cost of the second one is 5 minus 2. And 5 minus 2 is 3. The marginal cost of the third one is the $9 total cost minus the $5, which is 4. And the marginal cost of the last one is 6 because it's 15 minus 9. So at $5, you'd go ahead and you'd sell the first pizza. Marginal benefit's bigger than marginal cost. You'd sell the second pizza. You'd sell the third pizza. But you wouldn't sell the fourth pizza because the $5 marginal benefit to you is less than the marginal cost of the fourth pizza, so you'd only make 3 pizzas. Okay. Number 3, all of those things are true of price gouging, right? It doesn't allow retailers to raise their prices or the state of emergency that increases the demand for the product. So you've been, I don't know if you've been watching the news, but these hurricanes have been hitting Lake George, Louisiana, and so people are trying to flee. And so if we're looking at the price of gasoline, for example, if this were the demand for gasoline, people are trying to evacuate, and so they're willing to buy more gas at the same price. It's going to shift the demand curve out to the right, and here's what the price and quantity would be if you did not have the price gouging law. If you have a price gouging law and says, oh, can't go above P1, then what's going to happen? The quantity demanded is going to be over here, but the quantity supplied isn't going to change because the price isn't going to change. So what's going to happen? You're going to have a shortage. You're going to have a shortage, and you're going to have less gasoline being produced than if you let it go to the new equilibrium. So all those things are true. There'll be an excess demand or a shortage of the product. The less of the product will be available for consumers than if the price were to go up. And you're going to ration it somehow, right? Because there's only so much gasoline you got people wanting there. So first in line, or you tell your cousin, hey, you can come over at 7 in the morning and I'll sell you some. So there'll be some other mechanism. So the correct answer there is D. 4 is also all those things are correct, right? Mises says capitalism is a system based on social cooperation, right? We noted that that's how pencils get here, right? There's no difference, there's no conflict, excuse me, between producers and consumers in a market economy. I'm the producer. What am I trying to do? I'm going to get profit by providing something that you want at a value that is in excess of what the opportunity cost of the resources being used up. And so I'm trying to, if I'm a producer, I'm trying to figure out what you want. And if, so what's good for the producer is what's good for the consumer. And again, in a market economy, you can only benefit by pleasing others, right? Because it's a system of voluntary exchange. So I can't force you to buy my product. I can't force you to buy my labor. I can't force you to sell your labor, etc. So the correct answer there is D. Number 5, which of the following is true? Okay, we noted that if you don't own what we call a common property resource, that is, if you don't own the buffalo, what will happen? People will start shooting the buffalo, right? And we used that as example. We also used, we noted that today's buffalo or American bison are all descendants from some that got captured and were held privately, and that's how that got here. We remarked that when I went hunting in South Africa with this other couple, you actually, because you get charged for shooting a particular game animal, right? Everybody, fences off their area, but you also have people that grow the animals that are being hunted, and so when somebody owns them, there's an incentive to maintain the species. World War II does not get us out of the Depression, right? We said we'd talk more about that in when we do the last week of class when we do Keynesian economics. But we noted that if you were blowing stuff up, right? What we said that one of the foundations of liberalism is peace, right? And one of the foundations of liberalism is peace, because for market capitalism to work, we can't be blowing people's stuff up, right? And then Mises was not in favor of prohibition. He does say alcohol is a pernicious evil, but he talks about how that prohibition's not going to keep people from drinking beer, probably, and it could end up with unintended consequences, such as what happened was the mafia, right? If you look back, if you look at history, one of the revenue sources for the mafia was that they began to provide alcohol because it was illegal. They began to provide it, and that gave them, they had a monopoly in a sense that people who wanted to, who didn't want to violate the law didn't enter the industry. And so Mises was against prohibition. So A is the correct answer there. Number 6, and I noted that B should have said the price of orange juice sold will rise, but we can't tell what would happen to the quantity sold. So suppose that the price of oranges increases in the same time. It's found that drinking orange juice can prevent you from getting the coronavirus. Okay, so that, what do I have? I've got the price of an input rising so that the supply curve will shift to the left. So I have demand and supply, and I have some equilibrium price here and equilibrium quantity. And I told you a story that shifted the supply curve to the left, right? The price of an input going up. But I also had something which shifted the demand curve, right? People will buy more orange juice at the same price because now they know you can't get the coronavirus. And so what will happen? We know that the price has to go up, right? I can't have demand curve going this way, supply curve going that way, and you end up with a lower price. But I don't know what's going to happen to Q, because I don't know, did the demand curve shift a lot and the supply curve not very much, or did the supply curve shift a lot and the demand curve very much? So I only know, whenever I'm moving both curves, I only know what's going to happen to one of the things. So the correct answer there is B, right? That I can't, I know that the price is going to rise, but I don't know what's going to happen to the quantity. Number 7, which of the following is true? Okay, I observe you on a date with Mary instead of Jane. From this I can tell you like going on dates with Mary better than you like going on dates with Jane. Okay, that's not true because I don't know the totals just from the margin. All I know is that you have, the one time that I saw you, you were on a date with Mary, but you might have had 50 dates with Jane, and this is the first date with Mary. So the margin utility of the 50th date with Jane is less than the margin utility of the first date with Mary. The same thing as if I saw you eating a hot dog, right? You might have just had 15 hamburgers, and this is your first hot dog. So I don't know that you like hot dogs better than hamburgers if what I do is I just see that you eating a hot dog, right? So I don't know the total from the margin. The demand curve for an individual for a good is his or her marginal benefit curve, right? And that's because if I say to you, how many will you buy at $5, you're going to say, well, I'm going to keep buying until the marginal benefit is $5, right? If I can go right to that last, if it's continuous, I go to the right to that last point. And we, again, C is talking about we do things as long as the total benefit's greater than total cost. That's not true, right? It's the marginal benefit bigger, because I'm trying to make that difference as large as possible. Total benefit minus total cost. So am I adding more to my total benefit than I'm adding to my total cost? I'll keep doing that. All right. So the correct answer there is B. Number 8, which of the following can be explained by the concept of opportunity cost? All of those things, right? Attorneys don't generally change the oil in their car because even if they were really good, I've mentioned that I used to have an oil filter wrench and I used to change the oil in my 1975 Dodge pickup because the opportunity cost of my time was lower than paying for the glory to God or whatever to change the oil. But as my income rose, the opportunity cost of my time was greater than the value of glory to God. I could pay glory to God 25 bucks or something to change my oil, and that my opportunity cost of doing it was higher than that, and so I'll just go ahead and pay them. LeBron James did not attend college, right? LeBron James, #1 draft pick out of high school, right? Just imagine you're a senior in high school, then when you graduate from high school, you're the #1 draft pick in the NBA and was also Rookie of the Year in the NBA his freshman or his first year in the NBA. So he was not going to Hillsdale College, right? I guarantee you, LeBron, we could have given him a full ride to Hillsdale College and he wasn't going here, right? He was going to go play for the Cleveland Cavaliers. And of course, won his 4th NBA championship yesterday with the LA Lakers, with the 3rd team. Use of military draft will result in lower production of goods and services. We mentioned that, right? Saying that if I draft, then the opportunity cost that I'm giving up for a surgeon or something might be way larger than the benefit I'm getting from that person's service as a private. Okay? Again, it doesn't mean you don't want a military draft. It just means that you have to be aware of what the cost of a military draft is, and the opportunity cost is the major feature of the cost of a volunteer army. So all those things are correct. Mises predicted there would be a catastrophe in the world economy, not because the improper fiscal or monetary policy that we'll talk about again in the last week. It wasn't that income taxes were wrong or that monetary policy was wrong, but rather because anti-liberal thought was replacing liberalism as the dominant political philosophy. So correct answer there was C. And then finally, which of the following will not shift the market supply for fast food hamburgers, right? So when you're moving along the curve, right? When the price of the good itself changes, when the price of the good itself changes, you're moving along the curve, right? That's what the curve is. That's what the demand curve is, or the supply curve is. How much you're willing to buy at various prices, or how much you're willing to supply at various prices. So when I change the price, I don't shift the curve. If you're shifting the curve, you're saying you either demand more than you used to at the same price, or you supply more than they used to at the same price, or you demand less than they used to at the same price, or produce less at the same price. So the correct answer there is C, a rise in the price of fast food hamburgers. All those other things, change in technology, decrease in wages, a reduction in the price of an input, and if a Chick-fil-A begins selling hamburgers, what will happen is they'll bid up the price of the input, so the correct answer there is C. Right, any questions on the true false? All right. Okay. Excuse me, true false on the multiple choice. Right? Okay. True false. Number one, the assumption that individuals are self-interested means that economic analysis cannot explain behavior unless it's selfish. Okay, that we've mentioned many times that's not true. Right? Mother Teresa is an example. Mises did talk about bureaucracy in government being fundamentally different than in the private sector because there's a profit signal that is in the private sector. So that's true. Mises does talk about special interest groups causing a problem within democracy. So that is also true. Number four, suppose that there's currently only one producer of hot dogs. Okay, if the producer is earning economic profit, what would we expect to happen? If you're earning economic profit, what we would expect to happen is that the supply curve would shift to the right because other firms are entering. If other firms are entering the industry to capture that economic profit, then the supply curve will shift to the right, price will fall, quantity will go up, so that's what we expect to happen over time. Number five, if a good has inelastic demand, it means that people will buy the same amount no matter what the price. Okay, did I tell you guys that was going to be on the exam? Yeah, did I tell you more than once? Did I say that it's going to be like Jesus at the Last Supper, and some of you are going to put true, right? And guess what? 8 of you put true. Okay? Inelastic demand does not mean elasticity 0, right? It means it's less than 1. If the percentage change in quantity is 9%, when the percentage change in price is 10%, then it's inelastic at that point. All right? So guess what question's going to be on the final? Yeah, this one. Okay? Don't put true. All right? Don't do it again. All right? Like I said, it ain't what you don't know that's the problem. It's what you know that ain't so that's the problem. Okay. Number 6, one reason supply curves slope up is because total costs increase, right? That's false. It's because marginal costs increase, right? How much am I willing to produce? I look at what the added cost of the next thing is. There's only one way to increase wages, to increase productivity of labor. That's what Mises says. That's true. Again, 8 is also true. What does he say? Government intervention will lead to unintended consequences, further government intervention, and eventually the economy becomes centrally planned. Number 9, it is false. He says just the opposite, right? That you can't have political liberty without economic liberty. Okay? And then last, if mass transit is an inferior good, if it's an inferior good, then as income rises, you'll demand less the same price, right? That demand curve shifts to the left, so we should see lesser demand for mass transit. All right, any questions on true false? All right, number 1. As part of his platform, Joe Biden wants to have a $15 an hour minimum wage, and suppose equilibrium wage is $8.50. Use demand and supply curves to help you explain, right? Don't just draw the curve. I said that, right? I want you to be able, why I do essay questions is so that you can explain to somebody else, right? That's what I want you to be able to do. I want you to explain it to your parents or explain it to somebody else when your friends, when you go on break or something. All right, so use demand and supply curves to help you explain what will happen to the quantity demanded of low-skilled workers, the quantity supplied of low-skilled workers, and the amount of low-skilled workers that will be employed. Okay? So, all you're doing is changing the price of labor. Right? You're not shifting either of the curves. I'm not saying that, so again, we put wage up here, and we have number of workers here, and we have a demand for labor, and we have a supply of labor, right? And we said the equilibrium wage is $8.50. So if this is the demand for labor, how much what is that? That's going to be the value of the marginal product, right? I'm going to keep hiring people until the value of the marginal product is just equal to the wage that they got to pay, because the wage is my marginal cost. The value of marginal product is the marginal benefit. So if I make it, so this is the equilibrium number of people that will be employed and the amount of people, what the quantity demanded of labor is and the quantity supplied, and they'll be equal at equilibrium. Right? So now if I put $15 up here, what's going on there? I can't force employers to hire people. So the number of ND is the quantity demanded, right? But what's the quantity supplied? The quantity supplied is over here. And why is the quantity supplied getting bigger? Because at $15, I'm meeting more people's opportunity costs, right? So more people are going to be going in. So then so NS is going to be the quantity supplied. And then what's going to happen to the number of people employed? Well, NE was being employed before. Well, we'll put it at $8, at $8.50. But at $15, ND is the number employed, right? At 15. So the number employed is going to fall from NE to ND. Now, unemployment is going to be the difference between the amount supplied and the amount demanded. Okay? But it's made up of two parts, right? There's more people coming into the labor market, and there are fewer people being employed. So the number of people employed is going to fall from NE to ND. Okay? What about the use of machinery, right? Well, what do you got? You got a rise in the price of the substitute, labor versus machines. So what ought to happen is there ought to be a substitution so that more machinery will be used. That is, factories will have more labor, or excuse me, less labor and more machines. And of course, if we look at, when we look at manufacturing in the United States, right? Manufacturing output in the United States is, before COVID, greater than it's ever been, right? But you're only using about 40% as much labor as you used to, because machinery has been replacing labor as wages have risen. And then lastly, who are the type of people to be made worse off? Anybody that can't produce $15 an hour versus of marginal product is going to be is going to lose their job, right? And that's because I can't afford to pay you more than the value of what you add. So, any questions on number one? No? Okay. Again, don't be shifting the curve, right? They didn't do anything to say, I'm going to hire more labor at the same wage, or I'm going to hire less labor at the same wage, nor am I saying I'm going to supply less labor at the same wage, or I'm going to supply more labor at the same wage. Okay, number two. Suppose the fuel used to run electric power plants is natural gas, and that there is a decline in the price of natural gas. Okay? So use demand and supply curves to help you explain what will happen to the price and quantity of electric power. Okay, so I told you that electric power plants use natural gas to produce things. So what did I do? I just told you there was a decline in the price of an input. Okay? So I said there is a decline in the price of an input. What does that do? That lowers the marginal cost of producing electric power. So what's that going to do? That's going to shift supply to the right. At the same price, I'll produce more electric power because the marginal cost of making electric power went down. So if I put P and Q for electric power, I got a demand and I got a supply. Well, so you would draw this picture, right? And I would shift that supply curve to the right. And if I'm explaining it to somebody, then I would explain that the supply curve shifted to the right because I've lowered the price of the input, so marginal cost got less, and price is going to fall from P1 to P2, and Q is going to rise from Q1 to Q2. So what do we have? We have price falling, we have quantity rising. Okay? So what's going to, I said that you got to figure out I'm going to tell you that there's going to be something happening to one product, and then that's going to affect the demand or supply of the other product. Okay? So I got to figure out what is the relationship between electric power and automobiles. Okay? Well, if you think about it, automobile factories, right, require electric power. I don't know if you've ever visited an auto factory. I did that once when I was deputy state treasurer. They took us out to, General Motors took us out to one of their plants. Okay? But guess what? You at least got to have the lights on. You got to have electric power to do the machinery, et cetera. Right? So what is that? What I just did was in part I, the first part, I lowered the price of an input. So I got the same story. So what's going to happen? Supply is going to shift right. And you get the same story, right? You get the exact same diagram. Price falls, quantity rises. Excuse me. Price falls, quantity goes up. Okay? The third thing says define elasticity. Almost everybody got this right. You knew it was going to be there, right? Some people didn't, but most people did. What is elasticity? It's the percentage change in quantity divided by the percentage change in price, right? It's just a number. And it's defined that way because, and we could put the absolute value again, but it's defined that way to tell me what's changing more, right? If it's bigger than 1, the numerator is bigger. If it's less than 1, the denominator is bigger. So what I told you was elastic in the relevant range, that is whatever price wherever we were on the demand curve, within that range when it changes, it's elastic. So what does that mean? It's greater than 1. And then the explanation, right? It says to explain it, the percentage change in quantity is bigger than the percentage change in price. And I had quantity go up and P go down. That implies that P times Q had to go up. Because what I asked you, how much did they spend? Not how much did they buy, how many units they bought. I said, to explain what will happen to the amount that consumers spend on automobiles. Okay? Now, again, if I told you, just even if you were a little bit confused about what's going on, you should realize that whatever I ask you for the elasticity, you must have shifted the supply curve and moved along that demand curve, right? Because if what I did was I shifted the supply curve for autos, what would happen? Price and quantity would move in the same direction, so I don't need to tell you what the elasticity is to tell me what happens to P times Q, right? So that should have alerted you, and part 2 must have done something to shift the supply curve along the demand curve for autos, otherwise wouldn't be telling me what's going on with the elasticity there, okay? In part 2, some people were saying that you use electricity, that electricity is a complement, that you use autos and electricity at the same time, okay? Electric power, okay? I don't know. How many have ever seen somebody driving a Tesla? Okay? did they have a cord plugged into the wall and they're driving along with it, right? So that they're using the electric power? No. It's coming off of a battery, okay? They're not substitutes for one another, right? And so, you know, if you're looking at this question, and again, I said that one of the things you're going to have to realize is how things are produced or how things are related. You have to have some fundamental logic to the thing. So in any event, in number 2, or part 2 there, it should have been clear that you were having to shift the supply curve if you look at part 3. All right, any questions on 2? All right, number 3, why does Mises think socialism is not capable of creating wealth for the masses? We got 2 things going on. One is, we said that you have this incentive problem. How do you get people to work hard, right, when they're all being paid the same or paid whatever the central planner's going to give them? But perhaps more importantly, how do you get people to innovate, right? Because we said that innovation requires that you take on risk. So I have to give you some incentive for you to innovate. Now, we noted that you can get random innovation, right? Beauty and the Beast's father making the wood chopping thing. But systematic innovation, I got to have you some incentive to do that. And we noted that profit does that. And the question on profit that will come up again. But 2, the more important thing that he says the more important thing is there's this information problem. And what is that? It is decentralized. Right? It doesn't matter if you're in a socialist system or whether you're in a capitalist system. It's not that information is decentralized in a socialist system, but it's not in the market capitalist system. Information is decentralized. Whether you're in socialism or you're here, only you know how many hot dogs you're going to want or how much chalk you're going to want to buy or whatever. Right? And so what's the problem then? The central planner can't know the relative value of resources or how much of any good to produce or all sorts of things, right? How much labor to use over here. And so that explanation requires you not to just assert that the central planner can't figure this out, right? Because I might say, well, yeah, they can, right? Joe Biden's got a way to, or Kamala Harris has got a way to figure this stuff out, okay? One of the key points here is to say that the reason they can't do that is because information is too decentralized. So what do we use in the market system to figure this out? We use the price system, right? The price system is that signal that tells us what's the value of resources in the different goods that you're producing, whether you ought to produce more of one good or less of another good. So any questions on that one? All right, number 4, almost everybody got all 5 points on number 4. I told you that was going to be on there, and so you know, peace or freedom or property rights or tolerance of religion or democracy, and in each case, people are pretty good about explaining why that's why does he put them in there. All those foundations are there because he wants to create wealth for the masses. Market capitalism is the only way you can do that. And you need market capitalism requires a political philosophy that's consistent with market capitalism. Okay? And so for each of those things, you have to say, you know, like only free labor is efficient, right? Or democracy leads to social cooperation. Okay? So again, people did very well on that. Okay, number 5. This one was one of the weaker answers. Discuss the role of profit in a market economy by in directing resources into the production of goods for which consumer demand increases and out of the production of goods for which consumer demand decreases, right? So again, I want you to be able to explain it to somebody, right? So if you're going to explain it to them, you have to be able to say, oh, okay, when consumer demand increases, this is what happens, okay? And when consumer demand decreases, this is what happens. And what's the role of profit in that? So if we look at what happens when demand increases, then what do you have? You have that the price is going to go up, right? So if I have a market demand for a good and a supply, I got P1 and Q1, and I got an increase in demand. So you guys want more use of Zoom or whatever, okay? That market demand is going to increase and price will go up and quantity will go up. So I got price going up, I also have quantity going up. But what's going to happen? The existing firms, right, will be getting a higher price, but the marginal cost of production hasn't changed. And so what will happen? The profit will go up, right? And if we assume that economic profit is 0, right, then what's going to happen is now economic profit is now greater than 0. Key point here is then firms will enter, right? Firms will enter the industry. And when firms enter the industry, what's going to happen? Supply is going to increase. And then what's going to happen? More resources will go into the production of that good. So if there's a increased demand for, if there's an increased demand for the masks, then what will happen is that the price of masks will go up. Then in the short run, the quantity will go up, quantity supplied will go up, and prices will rising. There's nothing happened that altered where the supply curve was. So firms are going to be making economic profit, but if they make economic profit, that means other firms will enter, that supply curve will shift out, and more resources are going to flow into it, right? So that's a complete explanation of what's the role of profit here, is that the role of profit will be firms will now enter the industry in order to seek what that profit is. If we go the other direction, if demand goes down, then what do you get? And if I just draw the demand and supply curve, I got P1 and Q1. Well, when the demand falls, then I'm going to have price is going to go down, right? Quantity is going to go down, but profit will now be less than 0, right? Economic profit's going to be negative. When economic profit's negative, what do you have? Firms will exit. And then what will happen? Supply will go down, and when supply goes down, fewer resources are going to be used in the industry, right? So that's a complete discussion, a complete explanation to somebody to tell the logic that says, oh, if you need profit to have that stuff move around, right? Because and I didn't ask you to say what would happen if Biden's tax, increased tax on corporate profits went in, but if that happened, then you would have less of the movement of those resources around. Because I already know how to do what I'm doing here. In order for me to move into this other industry, then what's got to happen? I got to figure out how to do that, right? So there's a risk to doing that. And then the last part is it's the incentive to take on the risk of innovation. Again, innovation requires risk, you know, Steve Jobs didn't know that you guys were willing to pay the opportunity cost, the resources that go into making Apple phones. And so, you know, that's the incentive for him to do that, to drop out of college and to go ahead and start that company, is that he would earn economic profit if he were to do that. And the less economic profit you can earn, then the less the incentive to innovate. All right, any questions on that one? All right, well, we will resume Bastiat's the Law on Wednesday. Again, if you want to come into office hours, there'll be an office hours this week. If you have a question on your exam, I did write, my comments on there, so hopefully you'll see what happened. Again, for the final, you're going to have to do the demand and supply curve issue again, so it'd be useful to get together with other people, other students, and to explain to one another, here's what's going on. And that way, even if you know it, it will help you to explain on the essay question. All right?